Oh, what's going on, guys? So I've had my 3D printer for 4 months and it's been going non-stop. Well, until the other day. So I've been having really good luck with my printer for 4 months. It went non-stop. I did have one time where it did clog up, but it was really apparent and it was easy to fix. Recently, I was trying to print these parts. Now these I have printed before. I print them upright like this, and I know you can lay them down, but I just like the layer lines going this way. But anyway, I printed these no problem. And I tried to duplicate it, and they kept on knocking one another over. And they failed like 7 times, which is strange because I had never had failures before. So I guess when you don't have failures, you're not really learning how to fix stuff. But anyway, I changed so many settings, could not get them to print, and then finally I realized, you know what, why don't I just print one at a time instead of both of them together? What was happening is one would get knocked over, and then this one would print, and then this one would get knocked over, and then they'd fail. But if I just printed one, the print head would just stay on the single part, and it wouldn't come off of it and knock it off. So that actually did work. I printed up 2 of them, they came out great. So yeah, here they are, and it came out great. And this is a functioning trap, by the way. Light, sound, and whatever. But that's subject for another video. I think I'm gonna actually build another one of these and show you guys how it's done. I don't know yet. After printing that, I went on to print stuff like this, and this is my first part that I actually did a double color. And the main reason I did the double color is because I ran out of filament. But this came out freaking awesome. It just, I couldn't have tried any better to get the transition point any different than it is. It actually looks like it's made to be that way. So shortly after this part, I tried printing those parts and the nozzle clogged. So I unclogged the nozzle, and then I realized, well, wait a minute, I have a all metal hot end. So I put that on there, and I went ahead, adjusted all my settings, everything was good to go. I started a print, that print failed. Now, the reason that print failed was because it was out of TPU, and the TPU over the past month has gained a lot of moisture, so you could hear it crackling and popping and sizzling. So I scrapped that print, and I went to another print. I put on a brand new roll of PETG, like just came in the mail, opened it, put it on the printer, print. And then I went to bed. This is what I found. As you can tell, just a massive failure. This is, I don't know, this part was probably 50% done. And it's obviously very clear to me that it lifted off the print bed, and it kind of ironed itself before it just came off entirely. And then obviously this just happened. This sucks. So let me clean up my printer and let's try to figure out what happened. So now that that's all cleaned up, it was painfully obvious that the piece had peeled up from the printer bed. In doing so, it just printed in midair, made that rat's nest that you saw, and eventually clogged itself. When I had come downstairs, the first thing I had noticed was the extruder motor was just spinning in place and the filament wasn't moving. So it clearly bore a hole in the filament. And I would show you that right now, but I can't. The filament is stuck inside of the machine. Well, okay, just heat it up and pull it out. Well, I can't. There's 2 issues going on. When I heat this up, number one, it only gets up to 220, and it takes probably 3 times as long as it used to get up to that temperature. And that temperature does not allow me to flow filament out because it's clogged, or pull it back because I think there's something else going on inside of this hot end. And number 2 is when it gets to 220, this gives me a default telling me to reset the printer, and I've done that a few times. So what I think is going on now is there's a problem with the thermistor, which is the sensor that tells how hot the hot end gets. And I don't know that there's a problem with the actual heating mechanism, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this apart, and first I'm going to try to clear that clog and then see when I'm doing that if there's anything else wrong. So let's go ahead and pull that apart. All right, so I went ahead and pulled this fan shroud off. It's just 2 screws, one here and one here. Pulled that off, moved that to the side, and I removed the silicone boot from the hot end here. What I had done was I removed the thermistor and checked it out. The wires seemed okay. So I went ahead and put that back in, and it's working fine right now. So what I think has happened is some of the filament must have got up in here and jostled around the wiring, and for whatever reason, the thermistor didn't like being moved, and it gave a fault, and it continued to give a fault. So now that it's back in, it's heating fast like it used to, and it's heating up to temperature. I was able to get this up to 250. So while this was up to 250, I took a paper towel quick and just kind of cleaned up the nozzle a little bit. And then once I did that, I took the needle that they give you and stuffed that into the nozzle, and it went in pretty easily. So yeah, so I think for my next step, and this sucks because I'm gonna have to re-level the bed, but I think I'm gonna heat this back up, and I'm gonna pull the nozzle out and then see if I can stuff the filament through to get out the clog. If that doesn't work, we're gonna have to pull apart the the hot end. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and get right back with you. All right, so to pull this nozzle out, we're gonna have to heat this guy up. So I'm gonna go into prepare, preheat, and I'm just gonna put that to ABS end. All right, so once that's heated up, we can go ahead and remove the nozzle. Don't touch that, that's hot. We're gonna come back to that. Right now, I wanna see if I can push this clog through. And unfortunately, this will not budge. So the next thing that we're gonna have to do is remove this screw and pull the heated end free. And see if we can clear it now. So that's the problem, this guy's clogged. I don't know how to heat this up to get that out. We're gonna have to figure something out. So my next step here is I'm gonna pull this off and just check out from the bottom what we're dealing with. And this is just 2 screws. All right, so I've got it fully apart, and I think I figured out what has happened. So this thing was printing in midair. It was causing the rat's nest. Everything was working as it should. It was still feeding filament. And what had happened, I think, was when I stopped the print, I think what had happened was I might have shut off the printer a little early and some heat creeped up into here. I have a feeling that's not right. But anyway, my issue is the nozzle, while it's got a bunch of goop in there, and I'm gonna have to clean it out and probably even just chuck this nozzle, I don't know. That's not the issue. The heater, while it's got filament in it, everything is flowing okay there. The issue is in this heat sink, and as you can see, this is clogged up right there. And this filament won't go in or out. And the issue that arises if I try to heat this up is this heat break disallows heat from getting in here. So my assumption is my retraction settings were maybe too high for this hot end, and this thing is locked up solid. So I'm not really sure how to rectify this situation without maybe heating this up and pressing this to this and waiting for the heat to go into here long enough so that I can pull this filament out, or at least run it through until it's cooled off and then pull it back. I really don't know the best way to rectify this. So part of me just feels like I want to cut this filament somewhere up here and just deal with it another time and put the original hot end back on this, because I think this thing's a piece of junk. And here's why. Number one, where this Bowden tube goes into the top, they've got this little clip thing here. If this ever fails, you have to buy a whole new hot end. You can't buy this separately, which is what I had just researched. I can't find where I can buy this separately to just replace this part and start all over. So that's number one. Number two is this problem that I have right now. How do you rectify this? The heat won't go up in here. So I don't know. Like, I feel like I started more headaches trying to fix other headaches. So yeah, I think I'm done with this thing, and I'm gonna go back to the stock one because the stock one actually worked. So let's do that. All right, so let's try this. I'm gonna turn this on, and I'm gonna turn this on, and I'm gonna heat this right here, and I'm gonna take this and place it right here. I'm gonna hold it with my pliers, and we're gonna hope for the best. So let's go from here, preheat hot end. So let's see if we can do this way. Maybe this will work. Ah, that worked. That worked! Woohoo! And not only did it pull out, it pulled out nicely. Woo! Oh boy, and that's hot. Ooh, don't touch that. That's hot. Don't touch that. Alright, so what has happened is this tried to force itself in there, and I could also see there's like a little bit of a bump right there that tells me maybe my Bowden tube was not pushed all the way in. So what I'm gonna do when I put this back together is I'm gonna take this Bowden tube out completely, and I'm gonna force it into this before I attach it here. So this way I know it's 100% fully in there, everything's nice and good. So let me do that. But that came out pretty good. Awesome. Awesome. All right, so I was able to get this unclogged. And how I did that was I put the silicone boot down onto the heated bed, and then I put the heat block on top of that. And then I took this, holding it in a pair of pliers, and just pressed it on this once this was heated up. Because this is aluminum, it sucks up heat really quickly. So once I put that down there, I applied some light pressure to the filament, and it came right out. So that's good. This came out absolutely clean. So awesome. That's a step in the right direction. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this heat block and put it back into this. I'm not installing this at this point in time. I'm clearing everything out. So I'm just gonna place this back here and tighten it in place. So my plan now is to heat this up, because this part is clogged here. So I want to clear that out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to heat the machine up, and I'm going to feed filament through the top here. And once that clog comes out, I'm going to pull the filament out quick and cool the machine down. So that should leave me with these two items cleared. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to do the same with the nozzle to clear that out. Okay, that's 2 problems fixed. Actually, 3, because this was clogged. We fixed that. That was easy. This guy was clogged. we fixed that. That was easy. Here is the clog. As you can see, that's the clog there. And I was able to just heat this guy up and just push it right through, and it went through. Don't pause for any bit of reason, because that almost got stuck too. So then I went, while this was still warm, and I put the nozzle back in, and it feeds filament just fine. So and it feels like this is probably gonna be good. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the silicone sock back on, and I'm gonna make sure that this Bowden tube is fitted on there pretty well. So I'm gonna take this back off and just kind of really press it in there. And then once that's done, I'll reinstall this and put the fan shroud back on. The reason why I said there was 3 problems is, well, we had really 3 separate clogs, and then we had that earlier wiring issue, which has apparently rectified itself, because this thing's heating up very quickly, and it's also getting up to temperature and staying there. It doesn't give me any faults anymore. So I really don't have an answer for why that's happening. I'm just happy that it's not happening anymore. So once this cools down, I'm gonna replace the Bowden tube and go from there. Okay, so what I did was I took this Bowden tube and pushed it into the top of this heatsink. And I mean, I really held it here and forced it in place. And then I picked up this little black piece here and then pushed it in again just a little bit more, and then reinstalled this little clip that holds this black portion up. So I'm confident that this is all the way in. Not that I was unconfident before, but I really feel like I just wanted to make sure this time, because this thing, after all, did fail pretty badly on the first print. So now that that's all set, we had cleared the plug that was inside of this, we cleared the plug that was inside of the hot end, and we cleaned the plug that was inside of the nozzle. So this should be ready to go. I'm just gonna make a couple final checks to make sure this Bowden tube is placed back inside of the extruder motor just fine. And I think we're all set to button everything up. I'm gonna take the fan shroud here and put this back in place. And I wanna make sure that these wires here are out of the way. I don't want them basically rubbing up against this for the remainder of their lives. So I'm gonna try to hold them back and fit this in place, just so it sits like that. And then I'm gonna take my 2 screws and run them in here. So let me do that, and then we'll get to seeing if this thing's gonna work. Now I do have better Allen wrenches than this. These are just conveniently close, so that's that. But anyway, this is all buttoned back up. Everything should be good to go. So I'm gonna cut this, reload some filament, and then we gotta, actually before that, I'm gonna have to re-level the bed. So let me show you my trick to doing that. And there's a really good video on what I'm about to do that I'm not even gonna try to reattempt. This dude did a great job, so I'm gonna link that right there. So it's printing. We got it. Let's figure out what the heck happened here. So the first thing that happened was the part came off the print bed. And I think that's due to my settings not being hot enough. I had been printing PETG at like 90°C bed temperature, which is like way too hot. But for whatever reason, that's what prints good on my printer. So why did I change that? The filament that I bought, the brand new filament, says only go up to 70, from 50 to 70. So I changed it down to 55, 60, something like that. So that, I think, was my underlying problem. The first print came off, and I think it was because my bed wasn't quite level. The second print came off because I think the bed wasn't hot enough, or the part was cooling as it was printing. So I think that's what happened there. So what happened after the part came off? We ended up with a rat's nest of filament. Okay, that's fine. What had happened was it started melting to the nozzle, and I'm pretty sure this nozzle is now junk. It's a plated nozzle, and the filament was never sticking to it, and now all of a sudden all it does is stick to it. So I gotta replace that, unless I find a way to clear it off. I mean, I could probably hit it with a torch or something, but whatever. So when this rat's nest of filament came up, what had happened was some of it got into the part, not the part cooling fan, which is the one on the side, but the front one, the nozzle cooling fan, or the hot end cooling fan. Some of the filament got into that and stopped that fan, and I had forgotten about it. So what that did was allow the heat sink inside the cold portion of the hot end to actually get hot, and that's what caused the filament to melt inside of it, causing the clog there. And then the printer was having trouble heating up and also would never get to the hottest temperature, and we figured out that was a thermistor in the side that some of the rat's nest came up into and had jostled those wires, and I guess it was just enough to piss it off. So what did we do to fix it? The first thing we did was we heated up the hot end as much as we could and removed the nozzle. Once we removed the nozzle, then we went ahead and moved the heat block off the bottom. Then we went ahead and removed the cold portion of the hot end, and I cut 2 foot of filament and pulled that whole thing out. So I had that in my hand. Then I went ahead and heated up the heat block, put the cold end of the heat block right on top of it just to heat that up, and then immediately pulled the filament out. So that cleared the jam in the cold portion of, and I'll show you here. This is not the one. This is just, for example. So we had now cleared the jam from the cold portion of the hot end. Now we needed to clean the jam from this. So what I did was I reinstalled the cold portion of the hot end onto the printer. So then I reinstalled the heat block, heated it up, and then put filament through, and the filament came right through. I cut it here, and then I just pushed it through as far as I could, and then I grabbed the cold end of it and pulled it through. So that cleared out these 2 portions. I did the same thing with the nozzle. I put the nozzle on when it was hot, then I fed filament into it, pushed it through until it was running fine, which it was great, shut off that and removed the filament quick. So that cleared out the hot end completely. Luckily, the jam that was, or the clog that was in these 2 portions was not that big of a deal because we had the clog inside of this. So while it sucked, we got through it, we fixed that. Then I had to completely re-level my bed. And again, I linked earlier, and I'm gonna put in the description below, there's a really good video on how to level your bed. And it even comes with G-codes that you can download where you don't have to fiddle around with, okay, I'm gonna move the head here, I'm gonna move it here, I'm gonna move it here. You just push a button and it goes to where all 4 corners and the center. So I really like that. And then it also gives you a test print so you can see what portions of your bed are not level. So again, that video is linked below. I really don't know if I'm even gonna bother doing a bed leveling video because that one is just so good. But anyway, there's that. So in conclusion, what needs to happen now? So I think the underlying problem, like I said before, was the bed was not hot enough. So I've increased the heat to the bed, so hopefully that should rectify the part coming off. Now, as far as the parts, the nozzle cooling fan, that shouldn't stop, and I think that was a fluke incident where that rat's nest actually got into the fan and stopped it. So I don't think I'm gonna have that issue of the filament getting into this and clogging this anymore. The other thing that I did too was I changed my retraction settings from 5mm down to 4mm, and after speaking with Micro Swiss, that's what they suggest, 4mm or less for the retraction. So I'm gonna start at 4, and if that's too much, then I'll go down to 3 or 2 or what have you. So I think that has fixed it. I hope so, because I'm done screwing with this thing and I want to make videos. And let me tell you, that derailed my entire day. But the good news is if I didn't get it fixed or couldn't do it without the parts that I have, that would have taken me probably 2 weeks to fix, because I'm not made of time. So there's that. Whatever, it's fun. So after we completed all that, the printer is finally printing. And I think the one part that I'm gonna change is the nozzle, because it's a plated nozzle and now it's got gunk on it. And I cleaned the gunk off with a leather glove when it was hot, but it didn't come all off. And now the filament has this really bad tendency to stick to it. So I'm gonna replace that. I'm gonna buy a few of them because maybe I need to be changing them more often than not. Let me know in the comments below, how often do you change your nozzle? Because I've had my printer for like 4 months. It's been going non-stop and I've never changed the nozzle. Is that bad? I don't know. But anyway, I'm just happy that the printer's printing. I can get back to that. And now next week, I can get back to filming what I wanted to film today, because this took a lot of time to fix, guys. So with that, if you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, go ahead and click that thumbs up button. And if you haven't done it already, like, oh my God, 96% of you have not done it. 96, that's huge. Go ahead and punch that subscribe button, because you only get to do it once and it's fun, and I'll catch you later. Peace. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna So I'm glad that's over with. And what you would do to fix it, what parts you use or don't use. I'm off in the weeds again, man. I'm off in the weeds again.